Hey, Mikey.
It's Michael Brown.
You can try to find Michael Brown.
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
This is the Michael Brown Show.
Hold on tight to your dream. Yeah. Hold on tight to your dream.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Hollywood and Toto, Christian Toto, Michael Brown. Let's see what else we need to do this hour. Go to Christian's website, hollywoodandtoto.com. Follow Christian on Twitter. Twitter.
The bane of our existence.
Twitter, at Hollywood and Toto. Follow me, although I don't know why, at Michael Brown USA. Okay, I talked about this on Thursday, but I want your take on it. Let's just dive right in. You ready?
Yep.
Whoop.
Beep.
Beep.
Boop.
Can I get a computer?
Can you use your words and not noises?
He's like a 2-year-old. Use your words.
Angie, could you turn on the computer for me, please? Pretty please.
Ivanka Trump, who works at the White House, chose to post the second most oblivious tweet we've seen this week. You know, Ivanka, that's a beautiful photo of you and your child, but let me just say, one mother to another, do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless c***. He listens to you. Put on something tight and low cut and tell your father to f***ing stop it. Tell him it was an Obama thing and see how it goes, okay?
Where to start?
Yeah, where do we start?
That's like a gourmet meal that's been served right in front of you, and you got your knife and your fork, and you're ready to dig in. I want to start with the audience.
Okay, so this was Wednesday night, right?
Yeah.
Something that you mentioned before this hour started that I hadn't thought about or talked about on Thursday.
I went out. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
something different than that. I'm sorry.
Yes, I went out. Golly. If you only knew.
SOS.
SOS, that's right. Where the flares. This was Wednesday night. You casually mentioned something about this being TBS, and then you mentioned kind of, and I'm trying to do all this other stuff. This is a produced show.
Oh, yeah. This is not fly by night. This is a weekly show. And I would imagine almost every weekly show of its ilk, you've got a teleprompter you read from, you've got scripts, you've got multiple people weighing in, you've got maybe corporate overlords. I would imagine maybe someone from the brass at TBS maybe checks in, perhaps, I don't know. But this is a production. This is a major show. And the fact that it's weekly, there's more wiggle room because, you don't have to rush.
Right.
You're doing the Tonight Show, you're doing even the Daily Show. It's a nightly program. It's
You think this
4
is
or 5
taped
days a
earlier
week.
in the day? Like,
I would think.
So
There's no reason
sometime on Wednesday, this thing was taped.
There's no way this is live. They probably
Right.
want to get it up to Wednesday showtime as possible in case it's breaking news.
Sure.
But
it's like the Letterman or the late night shows where they do it like at 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
Yes. So I don't know this, but that's the way the system works. It's got to be fairly similar to the way their system works.
Okay. So for those who haven't heard, she calls Ivanka Trump a feckless C word.
Right, Samantha B.
And then drops the F-bomb later on.
Now here's a question for you,
In
for
this
you and
30-second
Angie.
clip.
Did they bleep the F-bomb or did we bleep the F-bomb?
We bleeped the F-bomb.
But they didn't?
They did not, nor did they bleep the C word. And here's how I know. Because when I pulled the audio originally on Thursday morning, I'm reading the story. I click on and I find it on YouTube and I send Angie the YouTube link. I listened to the whole thing and I said to Angie on the email, obviously needs to be bleeped. Then as I'm doing show prep, I run across the story again. And I click on the link because I'm thinking, well, maybe I missed part of it.
Yeah.
And it's the same YouTube, video unavailable. So in the span of maybe an hour during show prep, it went from being available on YouTube to where there's nothing on YouTube. It is totally disappeared.
I want to add some context here, which I just thought of. Usually, now for years we've been seeing this whole thing with the late night comics do a lot of shtick and they curse. They curse a lot. I think Jon Stewart made it be the unofficial origin of this, where he'd go on a rampage and he would bleep. and you knew he was probably saying the F word.
Right.
But it's sort of, the bleeps almost were part of the fun.
Yeah.
Part of the craziness. Like, he's so out of control, he can't even stop from saying blank. You kind of sort of knew what he was saying. Generally speaking, TV shows, unless it's like an HBO, they don't do the C word. They don't go near the C word. They don't mention it. They don't bleep it or anything.
Right.
And they often will say the S word. It's sort of, there are different labels of cable. Like on FX and AMC, they'll say the S word. They probably don't touch the F word usually.
I'm trying to
Generally
think.
speaking.
So the FX series that we watch,
Maybe The Americans,
yeah,
just for example.
I-
AMC, The Walking Dead.
yeah, I don't think I hear the.
But here's where I'm going with this. They didn't bleep the C word.
Right.
And they didn't bleep the C word. You know why? I think because they knew that people are unaware. They're not used to hearing that word.
Well, you heard the audience.
In any context on TV. So they needed to let people know that it was the C word specifically that she was saying. Because if you just bleeped it, you think, oh, maybe she's a feckless S word.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been another curse. They knew, and they needed to let the audience know that it was that specific curse. That's my theory, thinking about it.
Listen to the audience.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless c***. He listens to you.
There's an audible gasp initially.
Then the cheer.
Then they cheer, of course.
Yeah.
Of course they cheer.
Well, that's her audience. The first show that she did with TBS, she called Ted Cruz a horse blank salesman. I'm messing up the quote a little bit. It was
Yeah, I can remember this.
disgusting, vile comment
Yeah.
that if I'm on show 1, I wouldn't go near. I mean, if I'm on show 20, I wouldn't go near it. But I'm like, okay, that's it. And, you know, she's going to do the I'm sort of the girl. I can be even tougher than the boys. Perhaps that's her shtick. But, of course, it's one-sided. This is unbelievable. And, listen, when Rosanne said what she said via Twitter this week, I thought that was ugly. That was a racist tweet. I'm not saying she's a racist. That was clearly a racist tweet. And you could sort of spin any way you want from that. And that's it. But then, people say, oh, Bill Maher has called Trump an orangutan.
Right.
But the race angle makes every difference, clearly.
Right.
But a lot of people say, well, Keith Olbermann just got hired again by Disney, which owns ABC, which owns ESPN. There's the double standard. But that double standard wasn't enough. Along comes Samantha Bee and says, you know what? I'm going to shove your double standard in your face by not losing my job.
Yeah, I
mean,
didn't follow up, so I don't
Okay.
know. And so you and I might be speaking out of turn here.
Okay.
What I heard on Thursday was that she had apologized. It was really inappropriate, and I feel badly about it. Blah blah blah. It was an egregious mistake.
It was a very clear apology, to her credit. It was like, I'm sorry you were offended. It was a very direct.
Yeah,
the way apologies should be.
But I still think it was contrived in the sense that somebody told her, here.
Oh yeah, but
Read this.
but listen, we've seen a lot of bad apologies in
Sure,
recent
yeah, it
weeks.
wasn't
Even the Harvey Weinstein initial apology was ridiculous.
Right.
So I'll give her some credit there.
But calling the president's daughter, I don't care. Can you imagine? Can you imagine some conservative,
Dennis Miller,
referring to Malia or Sasha, or for that matter, the Bush girls, or for that matter, Chelsea, as the C word?
gone.
On a network. Gone.
No career.
question.
No career for 5 years, I'd say at least.
Yeah.
Because
to me, the C word is as offensive as racism.
It's kind of the neutron bomb of curses. I mean, I think that the N word is interesting because it can be used in rap songs. It can be used in certain movies to kind of evoke a mood or a tone. But the C word is really rarely used, at least in our culture. I think it might be a little bit, maybe in Britain it's used a little bit more frequently.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out as a guess. It's a big one. And what will happen to Samantha Bee? A low-rated show versus Rosanne, huge ratings, who was gone. I went into a movie screening this week. By the time I got out of the screening, Rosanne was canceled. Done.
So what? All right. I'm going to ask you when we come back. So what?
potato pie and I shut my mouth. Gone, gone with the wind. There ain't nobody looking back again.
So, Christian, you caught me on a bad week.
Me too.
Because I'm really, there's a lot of things other than just news. There's a lot of things I'm just really fed up with, where I truly want to just go crawl in a hole. I want to go back to the undisclosed location and just never come back. And this whole, because I came back into Denver on Tuesday night. And so, I'm driving back. I got 3.5 hours, so I'm flipping through stations, and everybody's talking about Rosanne. They beat that dead horse to death. And so when I came in on Wednesday, I didn't want to talk about Rosanne. So instead, I talked about Joy Reid, because Andrea Mitchell had asked earlier that day, what does it take for someone to get fired from a network?
Did she ask Joy Reid?
She asked Joy Reid
Oh, wow.
Joy Reid, who's still trying to dig herself out of a hole.
Oh, she's already dug out of the hole. Because
you think-
everyone allowed it to happen.
Well, so she's a 9/11 truther. She's homophobic. She's anti-gay. She's everything. But I don't remember writing those things. and so I didn't want to talk about any of that, except I put Joy Reid in context. I want to talk about Joy Reid and kind of use the double standard. Now here we are, a couple of days later, and we're right back to this double standard. And I'm just, as I said to you as we left to go to the break, so what?
Well, I mean, I think the public sees it. The public gets it. And President Donald Trump is President Donald Trump. And that's not a coincidence. We see this double. I mean, there are people on the right side of the ledger, Red State America, Flyover, whatever you want to call this particular group. And I think you and I are members. And we just see it day in, day out, week in, week out. We see the unfairness. And I think there's something about the American experiment that likes fairness, that likes to be decent and kind, and sees this sort of disparity and just says, I'm fed up. I'm sick of it. For those who maybe hated Roseanne's tweets, raise my hand. I hated that tweet. It was awful. I'll miss the fact that her show is not going to be on anymore. I like the fact that the show had a viewpoint that wasn't available on the rest of the TV landscape. That's gone. And then I see other things that are either equal or worse, and they get to keep on keeping on. And I'm just fed up with it. I mean, these are not isolated incidents. People are trying to use the Roseanne tweet to tar Trump, which is not fair. But I see this pattern across our culture, which we talk about all the time. And it's just this double standard. It's the hate we see from one side. It's the fact that other people on the right get punished for lesser crimes. They have no wiggle room. An apology from someone on the right is never sufficient. Everything is weaponized against us. And this will not be weaponized against Samantha Bee or liberals or Democrats or TBS or anything.
Now, okay, got all of that. And I don't just disagree with anything you said. I guess I'm searching for, like, where do we go from here? One thing I said on Thursday about this clip, that's supposed to be comedy.
Yeah.
It's not even, it's.
Well, that's where comedy is today.
So here, I said this on Thursday, something to this effect.
Okay.
If somebody cracks a joke about Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, name any conservative, and if it's truly comedic, like there's a grain of truth and it's kind of funny, well, I'm going to laugh at it. I just don't find this stuff funny. But that's what they say is comedy, and it's not comedy; it's commentary. But it's disguised as comedy. There's no comedy in this.
Yeah, well, I think what happened was that the late night comedians started getting tougher and tougher on GOP officials, and when they did that, the media in turn wrote about it and celebrated it, even if they weren't like waving pom-poms, just saying, hey, we need to have the Associated Press write a story about Jimmy Kimmel having a monologue against the GOP or having a monologue against the NRA. All of a sudden, they became newsmakers and newsbreakers. And I'm sure if I'm Jimmy Kimmel, I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty darn cool. I'm going to keep on doing that because I'm getting lots of attention. It's getting my name out there. I'm getting in the headlines. And it's kind of sort of approvingly framed. It's like, Jimmy Kimmel speaks truth to power. Jimmy Kimmel shreds Trump. Jimmy Kimmel shreds the GOP. And if you're Jimmy Kimmel, maybe you've got a good size ego. You're a celebrity. You're a television star. It's kind of comes with the territory. I think you feed off it. I mean, I think it's all these different elements working together.
Okay, but as a Jimmy Kimmel or a Samantha Bee gets more and more attention, their audience shrinks.
Yes and no. Stephen Colbert, actually, when he first came out against Jimmy Kimmel, was struggling. And then he went ardently anti-Trump, and he got the better of
All right, so
Jimmy Fallon.
let me rephrase it.
Okay.
Then. So maybe their raw numbers are increasing, but their share of viewership, and I'm going to correlate this back to a Westward article that actually I think is a jumping off point for an article. It was an Adweek about the morning shows and the nightly news shows and how they've lost so much audience. The morning shows have shed, like, just, I think in the past 12 months, almost 2 million viewers.
Oof.
Yeah. So they can claim that their rating is X, but their share, for example, the story in Westward about the local TV markets, their evening news shares have gone from like a 22 share, which is huge, down to like a 1.9 share. It's an amazing.
Wow.
They've
I
shed
wasn't aware of that.
They have shed more audience. How do I put this? I've got more audience than what they've. They're shedding audience like crazy, and my audience continues to grow. So maybe the late night comics get more attention and they get more of this ever shrinking pie. But I think the pie itself is shrinking because I don't watch any of this crap.
Well, here's the thing: in 2.5 years, potentially Trump is gone. Maybe he gets beat in 2020. They have damaged their brand, the late night landscape brand, from the singular artists to the sort of the landscape in general, have damaged their brand so sufficiently that people aren't going to come back.
No.
You're not going to come back.
No.
I'm not going to come
Not gonna
back.
waste my time.
I cover it,
Right.
but I'm not going to watch it ever. And I think there's lots and lots of people. I think people are connecting the late night shows to comedy today. They're connecting comedy today to Hollywood today. They're seeing Hollywood with the Harvey Weinstein scandal, the whole We Knew thing, and yet they're lecturing to us. I think all these things are interconnected. And I just think that they're damaging their brand. And I think that's good for no one.
Yeah.
The audience gets less to enjoy. The shows them. I mean, Michelle Wolf just came out with a new show. She was the one who was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. When she first announced the show, I got the Netflix press release. It said, no agenda except being funny. And of course, the first show, she's mocking Gina Haspel. She's mocking Sarah Huckabee Sanders in kind of mean ways. Not knocking Hillary Clinton types. Already, out of the gate, she has an agenda. They lied to us. Netflix tried to spin it a certain way. Not true. Now, she's a new comic on the scene. She's not David Letterman, who's on the cusp of retirement.
Right.
She's got a brand. She's got to deal with the future. And she has immediately branded herself as, okay, half the audience, you go away. I don't want to entertain you. They're not going to come back.
I was looking at the story you sent. There's no reference in the story that I can find skimming through it about the Netflix press release. It actually said, comedy, no agenda?
Yes, no
Michelle
agenda.
Wolf?
Yes. Little fib in there, don't you think?
Surreal. It's just
surreal. Yeah.
You're listening to The Michael Brown Show.
Well, she was an American girl, raised on promises. She couldn't help thinking that there was a little more life somewhere else. After all, it was a great big world with lots of places to run to. Yeah,
Hey, Christian. Oh, Lord.
I miss slow news days.
Really?
Just don't have them anymore.
Not so much for Fridays because we do the Ask Michael Anything.
Yep.
But thinking back on Thursday, I'm desperately digging around for, and I found a few humorous, interesting things. A couple of science stories, and that were interesting that kind of go against the grain. And on what was it on Wednesday, Angie, we did the story about the guy that became a bazillionaire by developing canine testicular implants, dog balls. This is my life now.
Your boy,
I'm
Fudge.
desperately searching for anything. I don't want to talk about Russia.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the special counsel. I don't want to talk about Samantha Bee. I don't want to talk about Rosanne.
From an entertainment point of view, there is, I think, a space and opening right now
Yes.
for a purely positive, purely cheerful, uplifting, funny type of entertainment. I don't know what form it would take, a song, a sitcom, a variety show, something that it just puts
The old
everything,
laugh in. The old laugh in.
Well, that got a little political, but it
Yeah.
wasn't mean, but
Right.
it still got it.
But that's my point about political humor. I can take political humor
Yeah, so
if it's
can I.
actually freaking funny.
Yeah, if it's clever. Yeah, that's just it's a thing of the past. Listen, it's not Samantha Bee. We're railing against her today. It's Stephen Colbert. It's Seth Meyers. It's Jimmy Kimmel. You know, it's everyone. It's
Those
John
guys I
Oliver.
just
It's Bill
don't find
Maher.
funny. I just
It's
don't
just
find them
it's
funny.
vicious and mean.
And I'm older than you, so I mean, maybe you're an old soul or something, but
I feel it.
but even the youngsters that I talk to, they don't watch this stuff.
Well, they may watch. I wonder if they watch it on YouTube. Maybe they catch the clips the next day. I don't know. Somebody's watching.
I guess so.
And for a while, all these late night shows have been the bomb for the resistance. You know, I hate the fact that Trump is president, but I can watch Jimmy Kimmel and he's going to rail against him. I think that's one of the reasons why Colbert has done fairly well in the ratings. It's got to wear off at some point, right? I don't know.
So at what point? Now, we can't measure Roseanne because they canceled the show. Bingo. Are there any metrics for Samantha Bee? Has
Yeah,
anything
I just read a story. It might have been therap.com. Her ratings are terrible. They were never big.
What about advertisers?
Well, sort of some of the key demographics that advertisers crave, ratings are bad. So she's in a precarious spot. But what I'll say is that for years and years, HBO kept showing the show Girls. The ratings were never good. And, you know, HBO is a subscription model, but they still want ratings. If they have a show with bad ratings, they're going to get rid of it.
Right.
They don't. That was a liberal dream, that show. It's sort of a, you know, Lena Dunham was this progressive superstar. I can't imagine how low the ratings would have had to have been for them to cancel the show. I think it's something similar here. I think if you have a low-rated Samantha Bee, she's a woman that there are not many women in late-night TV, a couple, and I think that they like the messaging. I think the media adores her, and there's always positive stories about her. And I can't imagine what it would take to fire her.
Hey, Angie, can I ask you a question? So, in your demo, Angie about her demo, among your friends, do they watch any of this stuff?
If they do, I don't know about it.
It's not the topic of conversation then.
Yeah, like when you're out with your
But
friends.
no one ever talks about Samantha Bee or Roseanne or anybody.
Yeah. See, I find that fascinating because would you consider that all your friends are tuned out, or they just never went to it, so they never went away? Do you get the difference? I mean, like they watched it and then decide that's not for them, or they never even watched it.
I just don't think they care about it anymore.
So they're just off.
You know what's interesting too? This just came to me. You know, I think when you think about the audience and the younger audience, like my kid's 9, and he spends all day on YouTube finding these like kind of wacky homemade videos. That's his favorite thing to watch. I think the generation coming up, and older than 9, I think they're finding their entertainment in very different, odd ways now.
That's what Angie just said.
And I'm
whispered in
thinking,
my ear that, a lot of friends just watch YouTube.
And I'm thinking, if you're a show, a comedian, a studio executive, broadcast executive, you want to nurture this audience. You don't want to chase them away.
Right.
You want to kind of bring them in.
Yeah.
And I think often what they're doing is the opposite. And they realize that all these cultural waves and changes are happening under their feet. And you think they'd be smart enough to say, wait a minute, we can't be that insulting. We need to have a big tent as possible because the demographics are changing. The way we consume content is changing. And audience just keeps shrinking and shrinking. You look back to like the Seinfeld finale. The ratings were massive.
Massive. Right.
Nothing gets anywhere close to that.
Right.
What's a hit show today would almost be a flop 30 years ago because the audience is so splintered. And given that reality, and given the fact that we're all fighting for this smaller piece of the pie, you would think that the shows and the networks and the comedians would be, I don't want to anger people. I just want to bring them in, make them laugh, at least try. But that's not the mentality.
Or do like, because Kimmel's pretty good. I think Kimmel's the one that's good about it. I can't keep them straight. Because again, I just pick up the clips doing show prep. But they have I think it's Kimmel, has a very active YouTube channel.
Most likely, yeah.
Where he actually encourages, much like we do. I mean, we encourage my audience to pick us up anywhere, the podcast, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you can find us. Because we get that we need to go where the audience is. To the point about YouTube, I find YouTube, you mentioned your kids, because I find myself doing this occasionally. It's a rabbit hole. Like I might see, just run across over here on the side, suggestions or something, and it's Traveling Wilburys music video. That leads me to something else, and then something else. Next thing I know, I've spent an hour watching music videos on YouTube.
That's right. And by the way, I bet you have a smart TV, and I bet you could tap into YouTube if you wanted to on your big screen.
Oh, I know
too.
it because I've seen the app for the YouTube.
Yeah.
When I go to the.
I do my yoga each morning on the YouTube on my TV.
Do you really?
I know, and that's it.
Yeah,
I got a bad back.
Did you just admit that on
I do.
radio?
Very strange.
At least you're not doing it with. It's not goats, is it? You're not doing goat yoga, are you?
What's goat yoga?
I don't know. People do yoga with goats walking around them. I don't know.
my dog is like 2 feet away, and she looks at me kind of funny
Like
sometimes.
what? Like.
And then when I'm doing downward facing dog, she kind of, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
But I do that.
Can you do yoga? Can you like get that? Never mind. Never mind.
It's for my bad back.
Whatever. Jiminy Christmas.
If you had told me 10 years ago, yeah, I'd be doing yoga every other morning, you'd be like, what?
Oh no, I
became
get
a pod
it.
person.
I get it. I totally get it. Well, okay, so you haven't been very helpful. This,
Again.
I think today is National Donut Day.
Ooh.
So Lori Lynn's supposed to come in next hour with donuts. So that's the only thing I can think of that's redeeming about today.
You're throwing that right in my face.
I am.
Donuts.
You're welcome to stick around and have a donut.
Donuts and cupcakes are my weak spots.
Oh, donuts. And you know the sad thing is she'll bring one in.
One?
And she'll bring in it's Lori Lynn. You know
Yeah.
Lori Lynn.
She's
You
very
work with
generous.
her.
Oh, yeah.
She's very generous. She'll bring in 4 dozen donuts, and then she'll kind of just hand me one.
And give you a little bit of the stink eye saying,
Yeah, because she knows
you
that I'm
shouldn't
not,
have more
I
than one.
shouldn't, and she'll lecture me about not eating it all, and I will eat it all, and I'll regret it. Okay, what do you want to do next? I just want to go home. But
That's right. I want to talk a little bit about Robert De Niro. And one of the reasons why, good segue, right? My segue was a lack of segue, although you did say what else you want to talk about.
Right, yeah.
Robert De Niro
This
fascinates.
is where I just kind of pass it off. This is where I just kind of throw it in your lap.
The music is playing.
Yeah.
What
Well,
will we-
take it away, Mr. Toto.
What will we talk about Robert De Niro? It's a twofold problem with him. It's movie selection and his big old mouth.
Wow, what a tease. You got to
Thank
go
you.
into radio.
I got a future in this.
You're listening to The Michael Brown Show.
Sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, it's all empty and I don't care. So my baby down by the river.
Okay, Mr. Radio Man. carry me through carry me through to donuts, can you?
Well, if I carry both of us to donuts. Yeah, I mentioned before about Robert De Niro, and he's been intriguing me for a while. Two reasons. One, he's making so many bad movies, and not just obscure movies, not just like indie movies that didn't connect to the box office. Really bad movies. The Big Wedding is one of the worst movies I've seen in quite some time, just for starters. And movies like Dirty Grandpa, just Disasterville. Now, here's a guy, I believe he's about 74. He looks great for his age. He's very hearty, hale looking. He's got his full head of hair. He doesn't look his age for sure. And he's always been a very, very talented guy, but he makes a lot of bad movies. And I think if you're older in Hollywood, there's always my gosh, what do I do now? The roles are going to the younger guys. I can't keep up. I've got to keep myself in the public eye.
I got to take whatever comes my way.
Yeah. But listen, if you're De Niro, you're a legend. Maybe it turned down a couple of these movies and maybe work like once a year instead of 4 times a year.
Right.
At the same time, he has been one of the most vocal people against Donald Trump. And I don't mean like, hey, I disagree with that policy. Hey, I don't think he should be so abrasive on Twitter. All
He
legitimate.
wants to punch him, right?
He multiple times says he wants to punch him, but it's so childish. It's getting so silly. Everything he says is sort of out of control, rabid. He says that I guess he's the co-owner of the Nobu restaurants. He like,
Oh, you're
I
right,
don't want I don't want him in my restaurants. I mean, my goodness, you're a grown man. Act like it for once, please. And what I'm noticing is that his box office successes. He's having bomb after bomb after bomb. Also, whenever
holy cow, yeah. So I'm looking, you've got this written up over at HollywoodAntonio.com. Out and out stinkers like The Big Wedding and Dirty Grandpa, bombs, comedian 1.6 million, heist 50,000.
Yeah, that's De Niro, man. That name should generate a little cash.
Holy crap.
It's bad,
That's not
right?
a typo, right?
No.
50 grand?
Yeah. And that's just a movie that barely made it to theaters. It might have went straight to home video. It might have been like those direct to like the video on demand they have now, which a lot
Heist.
of independent films do that.
What was Heist?
I don't remember. I didn't see it. I don't remember it. There were multiple
Is this one
movies.
of those Three Old Men movies?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, there are a bunch of those movies on this list in my story. I have never seen it, never heard about it.
Okay.
I just checked IMDb and like, oh, De Niro's got a lot of movies I've never heard of. Very strange. So it's the combination of those two things, this really infantile reaction to Trump. I mean, punch somebody in the nose. Come on. And let's go back a little bit to the past conversation this hour. If Robert De Niro said, I want to punch that at Barack Obama in the nose, he'd have to apologize. He might lose gigs. That's unacceptable. It's the president, okay? I know Trump is, rambunctious and pugnacious and says cruel things sometimes. The president deserves a certain level of respect. That's it. And what he says is ridiculous. But one of the reasons why I wrote the story was every time I see something on Twitter, on Facebook, even time I post something, even stories I see on Breitbart that are De Niro related, they get tons of comments. There's a lot of passion behind that. And I think the reason is people have loved Robert De Niro for decades.
Yeah.
He's a great actor. He's made great movies. And for a while, you didn't really get a chance to hear from him. He was one of these actors that didn't do a lot of interviews. And I quoted my story of how in 2006, I actually remember having the hard copy in my hand. GQ attempted to interview him. And the entire interview was trying to interview Robert De Niro. You couldn't get anything out of him. He was reticent. He was uncomfortable. He was this super big star, all that talent, just doesn't like interviews, which in a way is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now he talks and talks and talks, and I don't think he's the brightest guy in the world.
Do you
What
think
he says
this is
doesn't.
a New Yorker on New Yorker thing? Do you think that could be part of it?
Wait,
Well,
he's a New Yorker.
He's a New Yorker.
Right.
Trump's a New Yorker.
Oh.
And do you think there's just this? Because it seems to me that New Yorkers,
Mm-hmm.
you've got the Giuliani camp, the Han Shanity, the Sean Hannity camp. So you got all these New Yorkers over here
Yeah.
that are all pro-Trump, and then you got all these New Yorkers over here that are in the anti-Trump camp. And
Mm-hmm.
it just seems to me there's nobody like, is there anybody on Fifth Avenue right now that we could go to, 42nd and Fifth and
Yeah.
say, hey, Trump, and either not get punched or, a big hug.
Yeah, there's no middle ground.
Right.
I don't know what I think about him. The jury's still out. I'm not sure about that Trump guy. What's he done recently?
Trump.
Yeah.
I think we passed a building with his name on it or something.
Very possibly, but I think from the audience point of view, and this is sort of this artificial connection that we have with celebrities. We see them for years, we love their performances for years, and for De Niro, it's decades. And then all of a sudden, he reveals himself after years of being pretty quiet,
Right.
of being really kind of immature and silly and foolish. And I think there's a letdown. Even if you don't love Trump, you really go, oh, punch him in the nose? That's not what adults do. That's not what we're trying to, talk about in our culture. And for all the people who say that Trump is, inappropriate, he is at times. And he says the wrong things. He does. So your answer to Trump is to be 10 times worse than Trump?
Yeah.
I don't get that.
Yeah. I met John Goodman one time.
Uh-huh.
In New Orleans. He lives in Nolens. He came out, and they kept pushing him for a statement about the Rosanne cancellation.
Uh-huh.
In his statement, I'm paraphrasing it. No, I'm not going to comment because I'm not going to cause anybody any trouble.
Yes, I read that and I loved it.
Wasn't that wonderful?
It was wonderful, and it was funny because the headlines all said John Goodman speaks. Actually, he didn't speak.
No, he didn't speak.
He spoke about
Right.
not speaking.
Not speaking.
But
He
you need
said,
to have
I'm
a
not-
clickable headline. So you go, oh,
right,
what did he say?
I'm not going to speak. Right, right.
Yeah.
We need more of that.
We do. What's John Goodman's policies on anything?
I have no clue.
No clue either.
No clue.
One of my favorite actors. He's great.
Yeah.
If all he did was Raising Arizona, I would celebrate him forever.
Isn't that the
but-
truth? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So here's De Niro at 74, still working strong. Are people going to see him? There's a palpable anger from a large group of people against him right now, and that's a shame because he is
I
great.
hope he does another movie soon.
That is good.
I don't care. I just want any movie because I just want to see what the reaction is.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right, donuts. Donuts.
The Michael Brown Show continues after this.